Hey Switch fans, welcome back to SwitchTop. Today we're counting down the absolute top 25 indie games you need to play on Nintendo Switch. These games represent the very best of what indie developers have created experiences that rival or even surpass big budget titles. Let's jump right into it. Vampire Survivors is an auto-attacking roguelike that's way more addictive than it has any right to be. You pick a character and drop into a stage where endless waves of monsters come at you from all directions, and your character automatically attacks nearby enemies while you focus entirely on movement and positioning. As you level up during each run, you choose from random weapon and passive upgrades that stack together in increasingly broken combinations, like getting garlic that damages everything around you combined with spinach that boosts your damage output. The gameplay loop is simple. Survive for 30 minutes while collecting gems from defeated enemies to unlock new characters, weapons, and stages in the meta progression system. There's no story here, just pure arcade action, where runs start slow but escalate into absolute chaos as your screen fills with hundreds of enemies and your weapons create a light show of destruction. The pixelated graphics might look basic, but once you're juggling multiple evolved weapons and trying to survive the final minutes of a run, you'll understand why this became a phenomenon that spawned countless imitators. Katana Zero is a stylish, neo-noir action platformer where you play as a samurai assassin in a cyberpunk city, working through hits while piecing together memories of a war you can't fully recall. The core gameplay revolves around one-hit kill encounters, where both you and enemies die in a single strike, turning each level into a puzzle where you need to figure out the perfect sequence of movements, slashes, and dodges. You can slow down time briefly to dodge bullets and plan your next move, roll to avoid attacks, and deflect projectiles back at enemies with precise sword timing. Each level plays out in real time, but when you complete it successfully, the game shows an unbroken replay of your run like an action movie scene, which feels incredibly satisfying. The story unfolds through dialogue choices that actually matter, therapy sessions with your handler, and glitchy flashbacks that slowly reveal the truth about your past and the experimental drug keeping you alive. The pixel art is gorgeous, with smooth animations and a synthwave soundtrack that perfectly captures the 80s-inspired atmosphere, while the tight controls make the challenging combat feel fair, even when you're restarting sections dozens of times. Neon Inferno is a fast-paced 2D action shooter that blends classic run-and-gun intensity with a clever dual-plane combat system that constantly keeps players on edge. Movement and combat take place on a traditional side-scrolling foreground, where you run, jump, dodge, and unload bullets, but enemies also attack from the background, forcing you to momentarily lock your position and aim into depth like a gallery shooter. This mechanic creates a constant tension between mobility and precision, especially when combined with a melee strike that can parry incoming shots and even reflect them back at enemies if timed correctly. Levels are tightly designed around this layered threat structure, mixing enemy rushes, vehicle segments, and explosive set pieces that demand sharp reflexes and awareness. Between missions, you can prepare limited-use special weapons, adding light tactical planning without slowing the arcade flow. The game also supports local co-op, turning already hectic encounters into controlled chaos as players coordinate screen control. Set in a grim, neon-soaked future city dominated by crime and corruption, the story stays deliberately minimal, using brief mission context and character flavor to frame the action while keeping the spotlight firmly on skill-driven gameplay, punchy pixel art, and an aggressive cyberpunk atmosphere. Bollock's Pit blends classic brick breaker DNA with modern roguelite structure, turning a familiar concept into something surprisingly deep and kinetic. Each run drops you into a vertical arena where enemies descend from above, and instead of shooting directly, you launch bouncing balls that ricochet across the screen, damaging foes through positioning and physics rather than pure aim. As enemies fall, they drop experience that fuels mid-run upgrades, letting you add new balls, enhance existing ones, or unlock passive bonuses that dramatically alter how each attempt unfolds. A standout mechanic is ball fusion and evolution, encouraging experimentation as different combinations create powerful synergies and unpredictable screen-filling chaos. Outside of combat, the game introduces a light progression layer centered on rebuilding the ruined city of Balbalon, where resources gathered from the pit are used to construct buildings, unlock new playable characters, and gain long-term bonuses that carry across runs. The narrative stays intentionally simple, framing your descent into the pit as both a hunt for treasure and an effort to restore a fallen civilization, allowing the focus to remain on satisfying arcade action, smart progression, and the constant pull of one more run driven by discovery and experimentation. Animal Well is a mysterious Metroidvania that drops you into a dark, interconnected world filled with strange creatures and environmental puzzles where every screen hides secrets. You play as a small blob navigating through a massive underground ecosystem, using items like a frisbee that can hit distant switches, a lantern that reveals hidden platforms, and a yo-yo that stuns enemies and activates mechanisms. The game never holds your hand or marks objectives on a map. Instead, you're encouraged to explore freely, experiment with your tools, and pay attention to subtle environmental clues that hint at hidden passages and puzzle solutions. Combat isn't the focus here. Most creatures can't be killed and serve as obstacles or puzzle elements you need to work around, using your items and the environment. The pixel art has an incredible sense of depth and atmosphere, with lighting effects that create genuinely unsettling moments as you venture into darker areas filled with hostile wildlife. Progression comes from finding new items that open up previously inaccessible areas, classic Metroidvania style. But the game goes deeper with layers of secrets that require serious lateral thinking and observation to uncover. CrossCode is a 16-bit action RPG that takes place inside a fictional MMO called Crossworlds, where you play as Leah, a player who's lost her memory and can barely speak beyond a few words. The story follows Leah as she progresses through the MMO's content, raiding dungeons with other players and NPCs while slowly uncovering the mystery behind her condition and the game's true purpose. The combat system is incredibly satisfying, blending real-time action with ranged attacks from your VRP balls that ricochet off walls, melee combos, special arts, and perfect guard timing that lets you counter enemy attacks. The puzzle dungeons are the game's highlight, featuring complex environmental challenges that require you to use your abilities in creative ways, manipulating blocks, timing switches, and bouncing shots off multiple surfaces to hit distant targets. As you level up, you unlock new abilities through a circuit board skill tree, where you place nodes to gain stat boosts, special moves, and passive abilities, with limited space forcing you to make meaningful choices about your build. The game absolutely nails the MMO feel, with other players running around the hub areas, party members joining for dungeon runs, and even MMO-style fetch quests and grinding. Except here, it's all designed as a single-player experience. Blasphemous 2 continues the dark, religious horror Metroidvania series with improved combat and more grotesque Spanish Catholic imagery than you can shake a sensor at. You play as the Penitent One, resurrected once again to prevent a prophesied child from being born and dooming the world to eternal torment, traveling through the nightmarish land of Custodia, fighting twisted religious abominations. The combat system has been completely overhauled, with 3 weapon types you can swap between: a fast dagger, a heavy mace, and the returning sword, each with their own skill trees and combat styles that you can switch on the fly to adapt to different enemies. The platforming feels tighter, with more responsive controls and new movement abilities like wall climbing and a dodge that actually has invincibility frames, making the challenging boss fights feel fairer. Exploration rewards curiosity, with hidden areas containing lore, weapon upgrades, and side quests for NPCs that often end in tragedy, fitting the game's bleak tone. The hand-drawn pixel art is simultaneously beautiful and disturbing, depicting a world where religious devotion has manifested as body horror and architectural impossibilities, while the soundtrack blends orchestral pieces with Spanish guitar and chanting.
Pray, how can I assist thee, penitent one?
Cuphead is a run-and-gun boss rush game where you play as Cuphead and optionally Mugman, two brothers who lost a bet with the devil and must collect soul contracts from debtors across the Inkwell Isles. The game is famous for its hand-drawn 1930s cartoon art style, with every frame animated traditionally and colored to look like an authentic Fleischer Studios production, complete with film grain and orchestral jazz recordings. The gameplay is brutally difficult, with most levels being elaborate boss fights that require you to memorize attack patterns, manage your position, and maintain focus through multiple phases that completely change the fight dynamics. You have a basic infinite ammo shot, a special weapon you can equip before each level, a dash with brief invincibility, and a parry move that lets you bounce off pink objects to build your super meter. The regular run-and-gun levels break up the boss fights, tasking you with platforming through enemy-filled stages to reach the end, while collecting coins used to buy new weapons and charms from the shop. Each boss has completely unique mechanics and visual designs, from a giant frog with fireflies in its stomach to a dragon who attacks from a castle window, ensuring you never know what to expect from the next encounter. Crypt Custodian is a charming Metroidvania where you play as Pluto, a cat who's just died and ended up in the afterlife's graveyard, working as a custodian while searching for a way to reach a better afterlife in the palace above. The story balances humor and melancholy as you meet other deceased animals, each with their own stories about life and death, while uncovering the truth about the palace and the beings who run the afterlife. The combat uses a simple broom as your weapon, with a 3-hit combo, a charged spin attack, and eventually magical abilities that consume energy, keeping fights straightforward but satisfying against the variety of ghost enemies and bosses. Exploration is the core focus, with the interconnected graveyard regions hiding collectibles like coins for purchasing upgrades, key items that unlock new areas, and optional challenge rooms that reward you with permanent stat increases. The movement abilities you unlock, like double jump, wall jump, and a dash, open up the map Metroidvania style, and the game does a great job of making backtracking feel rewarding, with newly accessible secrets everywhere you look. Dave the Diver combines ocean exploration, restaurant management, and an absurd story about a diver who just wanted a simple vacation, but gets roped into running a sushi restaurant and uncovering ancient underwater civilizations. During the day, you dive into the Blue Hole, a mysterious body of water that changes layout daily, harpooning fish with limited oxygen and cargo space, while completing story missions that range from photographing sea creatures to fighting giant squid bosses. At night, you manage a sushi restaurant serving dishes made from the fish you caught, hiring staff, upgrading equipment, and serving customers quickly to maximize tips that fund your diving gear upgrades. The gameplay loop is incredibly satisfying. Catch exotic fish during the day, turn them into premium menu items at night, use the profits to upgrade your diving suit and harpoon, then dive deeper to catch even rarer fish in a constantly escalating cycle. The story goes completely off the rails in the best way possible, introducing a mermaid civilization, environmental activists, smartphone-wielding sea people, and increasingly ridiculous plot twists that somehow all tie together. Sea of Stars is a turn-based RPG that pays tribute to classic 90s JRPGs while adding modern quality-of-life features that eliminate the genre's typical frustrations. You play as two solstice warriors, Valir and Zale, who can channel the power of the sun and moon to fight against an alchemist summoning world-ending monsters. The combat system uses timed button presses during attacks and blocks to increase damage and reduce incoming hits, keeping you engaged during every battle instead of just selecting menu options. Each enemy has locks above their health bar, showing what type of damage will interrupt their powerful attacks, forcing you to plan your moves strategically and use your party's different damage types effectively. The game respects your time with no random encounters, instant healing spots before bosses, and the ability to swap party members mid-battle to adapt to different situations. The story follows a classic hero's journey, but executes it with memorable characters and genuine emotional moments, while the soundtrack from the original Chrono Trigger composer creates a nostalgic atmosphere. Shogun Showdown is a roguelike deck builder that plays out on a grid-based board, where positioning matters as much as the cards you play. You're a wandering samurai, fighting through increasingly difficult encounters to reach and defeat the shogun who wronged you, using a deck of attack and skill tiles that determine your available moves each turn. The grid system creates tactical depth, where you need to consider enemy positions, attack ranges, and movement patterns while planning your turn, since enemies telegraph their next moves and you can manipulate the turn order through certain abilities. Each run has you choosing paths through different encounters, shops, and events, collecting new tiles to add to your deck and relics that provide passive bonuses or unlock new strategic possibilities. The tile-based combat feels fresh compared to traditional card battlers because moving to different grid positions, pushing enemies into hazards, or grouping them for area attacks becomes part of your decision-making. Between runs, you unlock new characters with completely different starting decks and playstyles, from a quick assassin to a tank that absorbs hits, giving you reasons to experiment with various strategies. Nobody Saves the World is an action RPG where you play as Nobody, a pale, featureless person who finds a magic wand that lets them transform into different forms, like a rat, knight, mermaid, or robot. The setup is simple. A powerful wizard has disappeared, and his magic wards protecting the world are failing, letting calamity creatures spill out. And you need to find him while growing strong enough to face the spreading corruption. Each form has unique abilities and plays completely differently, with the rat being small and quick, while the bodybuilder focuses on heavy melee strikes, and the horse excels at charging attacks. The genius of the game is how you unlock and upgrade forms by completing quests specific to each transformation, like defeating enemies with the rat's poison or hitting multiple enemies with the turtle's shell spin. As you level up forms, you can mix and match abilities between them, creating wild combinations like a zombie that shoots the ranger's arrows or a magician that can charge like a horse. The world opens up gradually as you complete main story dungeons that are randomly generated each time you enter, with different modifiers that might require specific damage types or restrict certain abilities. Chained Echoes is a 16-bit style RPG that combines classic turn-based combat with skyship battles and mech fights across a war-torn fantasy continent. You control a party of characters caught in a conflict between three kingdoms, uncovering a conspiracy that threatens the fragile peace treaty while dealing with their own personal demons and interconnected pasts. The combat system ditches traditional MP for an overdrive gauge that shifts during battle based on your actions. Staying in the green zone gives bonuses, but certain powerful abilities push you into yellow or red zones that buff enemies or reduce your effectiveness. Party members can combine attacks for devastating combo abilities, and you need to manage the overdrive gauge carefully to maximize damage output while avoiding the penalties of overheating. The reward board replaces traditional experience levels, letting you spend SP earned from battles to unlock stat increases, new abilities, and passive bonuses in any order you choose, giving you control over how your party develops. Skyship segments let you explore the world map and engage in aerial battles using different mechanics, while mech battles add another layer of strategic depth with their own abilities and upgrade paths. Celeste is a challenging platformer where you play as Madeline, a young woman battling anxiety and depression while attempting to climb the massive Celeste mountain despite everyone telling her she's not ready. The story tackles mental health with surprising depth and sensitivity, using the mountain climb as a metaphor for overcoming internal struggles and learning to accept help from others. The controls are tight and responsive. With simple mechanics, you can jump, climb walls briefly before your stamina runs out, and perform a directional dash once before touching the ground to refresh it. These basic moves combine into incredibly demanding platforming challenges that require precision timing and creative problem solving, with each chapter introducing new mechanics like wind currents, bouncy clouds, or platforms that disappear when you dash. The game is brutally difficult, but never unfair, with instant respawns and generous checkpoints that let you tackle individual screens without replaying large sections when you die. Assist mode lets you adjust game speed, give yourself infinite stamina, or even become invincible if you want to experience the story without the challenge, showing the developers care more about players experiencing the game than enforcing difficulty. Slay the Spire pioneered the deck-building roguelike genre, where you climb a spire filled with enemies and encounters, building a deck of cards that represent your attacks, skills, and powers. You choose one of 4 characters, each with completely different card pools and playstyles. The Ironclad focuses on strength scaling and exhausting cards. The Silent relies on poison and shivs. The Defect manipulates orbs for passive effects. And the Watcher switches stances for massive damage swings. Combat is turn-based, where you draw a hand of cards each turn and spend energy to play them, planning combinations that maximize damage while surviving enemy attacks, shown through their intent icons. After each fight, you're offered new cards to add to your deck, and the strategy comes from building a focused deck rather than just grabbing every powerful card, since a bloated deck dilutes your chances of drawing your best combos. Between combats, you'll encounter shops to buy relics that provide permanent passive bonuses, random events that offer risk-reward choices, and rest sites where you can heal or upgrade cards to stronger versions. Monster Sanctuary blends Metroidvania exploration with Pokémon-style monster collecting and a unique turn-based combat system that emphasizes team synergies and combo building. You play as a monster keeper, traveling through an interconnected world to stop an ancient evil, using monsters as both companions and tools to navigate the environment, with abilities like flight, swimming, and breaking obstacles. The combat uses a 3-monster team, where turn order is determined by speed, but the depth comes from buff stacking and combo chains that build your score multiplier throughout the fight. Every action, from applying debuffs to landing critical hits, increases your combo meter, and higher combos mean better loot drops after battle, encouraging you to build teams that synergize rather than just overpowering enemies. Each monster has a skill tree where you spend points to unlock new abilities, stat bonuses, and passive effects, letting you customize common monsters into specialized roles like tanks, healers, or damage dealers. The Metroidvania structure gates progress behind monster abilities, so you'll backtrack to previous areas with newly hatched monsters that can access paths you couldn't reach before, finding hidden treasures and rare monster eggs. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound brings the hardcore action series into the roguelite genre with punishing combat and a cel-shaded comic book art style. You play as a ninja fighting through procedurally generated levels filled with demons and monsters, using precise combat mechanics where every move can be cancelled into dodges or other attacks for fluid combo strings. The combat demands mastery of parrying enemy attacks at the last second to create openings, managing your key energy for special moves, and positioning yourself to avoid being surrounded by aggressive enemies. Each run gives you random weapon and ability upgrades that modify your playstyle, from faster attack speed to new special moves, but the core challenge remains your skill at reading enemy patterns and executing perfect timing. Boss fights are intense multi-phase battles that test everything you've learned, with attack patterns that require memorization and split-second reactions to survive. The roguelite structure means death sends you back to the beginning, but you keep some permanent progression in the form of unlocked abilities and characters with different starting loadouts. Dredge is a fishing horror game where you captain a small boat in an archipelago, fishing during the day and trying to survive the supernatural horrors that emerge at night. You play as a fisherman who arrives in a remote island community after a shipwreck, taking on jobs to pay off your debt while uncovering the dark secrets lurking in the fog-shrouded waters. The core loop involves sailing between islands during daylight hours, casting your line to catch fish through simple, timing-based minigames, then selling your catch to upgrade your boat's equipment and storage. As night falls, your panic meter increases, and strange things start happening. Your vision distorts, phantom objects appear in the water, and catching aberrant fish mutations becomes more likely the more your sanity deteriorates. Managing your time and risk becomes crucial, since you can push into the night for rare catches, but risk losing cargo, or worse, if you panic completely. The boat customization lets you install better engines for speed, improved fishing rods for deeper waters, and storage upgrades that play like inventory Tetris as you arrange your catches. Absolum is a fantasy-driven action game that merges classic side-scrolling beat-em-up combat with modern roguelite progression, creating a loop that rewards both skill and experimentation. Combat is fast and combo-focused, built around light and heavy attacks, throws, evasive dashes, and well-timed counters that keep encounters aggressive and tactile. Each run sends you through shifting regions filled with enemy packs and boss fights, where you choose from randomized rituals that grant elemental effects, stat modifiers, and playstyle-defining perks before heading into battle. As you fight, you generate mana to unleash arcana abilities, powerful spells that can turn the tide of chaotic encounters when used smartly. Progress persists between runs, unlocking new abilities, upgrades, and options that gradually expand your combat depth and strategic freedom. The story unfolds in the war-torn world of Talum, where a small band of rebels rises against the tyrannical Sun King Azra, seeking to reclaim forbidden magic and restore balance. Narrative elements are woven naturally through environments, characters, and side objectives, rather than lengthy exposition, keeping momentum high.
For the ancestors!
Balatro is a poker-based roguelike deck builder that turns traditional poker hands into an addictive strategy game where you're trying to reach score thresholds rather than betting against opponents. Each run has you playing through 8 antes with 3 blinds each, building poker hands to reach the required score while managing a limited number of hands and discards per round. The depth comes from joker cards that modify your scoring in wild ways. One might multiply your score for every heart you play. Another adds chips for each face card, and you can stack up to 5 jokers that combo together in unexpected ways. Between blinds, you visit a shop to buy new joker cards, planet cards that permanently upgrade specific poker hands, tarot cards that modify your deck, or vouchers that change game rules. The strategy involves building your deck around your jokers, sometimes ditching traditional poker logic to focus on whatever synergies you've created. The minimalist presentation keeps everything clear and readable, and runs move quickly once you understand the systems. There's no story here, just pure strategic gameplay that's easy to learn but incredibly deep once you start discovering powerful combinations. Stardew Valley drops you into a run-down farm inherited from your grandfather as you escape corporate life for a simpler existence in a small, rural town. The gameplay loop involves waking up each morning to tend your crops, care for animals, explore the mines for resources and combat, fish in various locations, and build relationships with the townspeople, who each have their own schedules and storylines. Farming mechanics are straightforward but deep. You plant seasonal crops, water them daily unless you have sprinklers, harvest them for profit, and gradually expand your operation with new buildings like barns, coops, and artisan equipment that processes raw materials into valuable goods. The mines provide roguelike dungeon crawling, where you fight monsters with simple combat mechanics, collect ores for tool upgrades and crafting, and push deeper through procedurally generated floors. Social simulation plays a huge role as you befriend or romance the 12 marriage candidates through gift-giving and completing personal quests that unlock heartfelt cutscenes revealing their backstories. Seasons change your available crops and activities, festivals occur throughout the year, and the community center restoration provides long-term goals through collection bundles. Dead Cells is a roguelike Metroidvania where you control a reanimated corpse fighting through a plague-infested island, dying repeatedly but keeping permanent progression that gradually unlocks new paths and abilities. Each run starts you in the prisoner's quarters with basic gear, and you fight through procedurally generated levels, collecting cells from enemies that serve as currency for permanent unlocks if you can reach the next checkpoint without dying. Combat is fast and fluid, with dodge rolls, parries, and a huge arsenal of weapons, from quick daggers to slow hammers, each with different movesets and special effects that encourage experimentation. You equip 2 weapons and 2 skills in your loadout, finding upgrades throughout each run that boost your stats in Brutality for damage, Tactics for ranged attacks and deployables, or Survival for health and shields. The Metroidvania elements come from permanent runes that unlock wall climbing, teleportation, and other movement abilities that open shortcuts and alternate routes through the castle. Boss fights are challenging skill checks with multiple phases, and the difficulty scales through boss cells that you unlock by beating the game, adding new enemy types and mechanics each tier. Hades 2 continues the roguelike action formula with Melinoë, the princess of the underworld and sister to the first game Zagreus, as she fights to stop the titan Kronos, who has invaded the underworld and imprisoned Hades. The combat builds on the original with 6 weapon types that each have multiple aspects changing their movesets, a new magic system with Omega casts that consume your mana for devastating charged attacks, and Sprint replacing Dash for faster exploration. Each escape attempt takes you through procedurally arranged encounters where you choose boons from Olympic gods that modify your abilities, creating powerful synergies when you stack complementary effects from gods like Apollo's precision strikes with Hestia's scorch damage. The hub area is now a magical crossroads where you gather resources through witchcraft gardening and incantations, unlocking permanent upgrades that affect future runs or open new story paths. Melinoë can switch between the underworld and surface world, each with unique biomes, enemies, and rewards, essentially giving you 2 separate but connected campaigns. Hollow Knight Silksong shifts perspective to Hornet, the nimble princess protector from the original game, now captured and taken to a new kingdom called Farloom, where she must ascend from the depths to reach the top. The combat is faster and more aggressive than the original, with Hornet's needle and thread fighting style, featuring aerial combos, a bind ability that traps enemies temporarily, and tool abilities replacing the first game's spells for more active combat options. Movement feels incredibly fluid, with Hornet's natural agility, including a dash that doesn't require an upgrade, wall running, and various jumps that make traversal smoother while maintaining the challenging platforming the series is known for. The structure inverts the original game's descent by having you climb upward through Farloom's layers, each region featuring distinct environments, enemy types, and NPCs with their own agendas in this unfamiliar kingdom. Boss fights showcase creative designs that test your mastery of Hornet's moveset, with multiple phases and attack patterns that demand pattern recognition and precise execution. The quest system is more prominent, with Hornet taking on hunts and tasks from Farloom's inhabitants, adding direction while maintaining the exploration-focused gameplay. And there you have it, the top 25 indie games on Nintendo Switch that you absolutely need to play. What's your favorite indie game on Switch? Did it make the list? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let me know what games you think deserve a spot. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and subscribe to SwitchTop for more Nintendo Switch content. Until next time!